I think normal life, we're talking to each other in Google Translate. It's nonsense what we do. So the idea that art is something that's an add-on to life, that's part of the con. That's part of, in the beginning, in the beginning was the word lie. The first word of St. John's Gospel is a total lie. In the beginning was not the word. In the beginning was movement, breath, imagination, music. All of these things would have started way before Logos began. And art reconnects us to those very important things. But I just get cross sometimes when people talk about art like there's real life, and then there's this, we look after ourselves culturally as a kind of add-on. I don't think so. It looks like that now. The commoditized world that we live in would like us to think that it's fine as long as art can be controlled, and, you know, the companies can give us money to do our art, and we can patronize art, and we can patronize actors, and we can patronize writers, and they're doing their art thing that's not really grown up. But actually, I think our inner experience, our experience of ourselves, everybody, is much more to do with art than to do with words. So, to come back to your question, what is art for seems to be the wrong sort of question. You know, the real question is this commoditized life we live in when we use words to describe ourselves. What's that about? I mean, that's what's odd, I think. I always think it's a good piece of art when it stops me thinking, and I just had a sort of visceral experience watching it. I was very good friends with Sylvie once, you know, when we haven't seen each other because our paths haven't crossed. It was wonderful to see him again last night. But actually, myself and my partner Nick were both blown away by it. I mean, the two principal actors were fantastic, but also it's just Sylvia's lightness of touch to deal with this enormous subject of how we die, it's extraordinary, the philosophical depths of it. And it was all, you know, very well incarnated through images. You never felt you were watching an intellectual concept, for example. It was a very emotional, immediate experience, and I thought it was wonderful. And I think if it's a good work of art, it makes me feel like a child again. And, you know, I didn't feel clever. I was just very, very, very grateful. And it's wonderful to be in an auditorium like that, full of so many really enthusiastic people, many of whom are very young. And it reminds me that sometimes we think that we come together to make theatre. And I think that's wrong, actually. I think we make theatre to come together. It's the coming together that matters. And the theatre is almost an excuse to come together. There are different ways we can come together. You know, you can come together, I guess, if you watch a Netflix series, but actually everybody is completely different. It keeps people very separate. But the fact that we're all living and sharing the same experience is wonderful. And I don't know why I felt it last night. I was so pleased. I'm also very emotional and talking too much because my partner and I, we've been locked down for 18 months. So this is our first time out. And we're like, to use a vulgar Irish expression, we're like pigs in shit. So we're very, very happy to be here. And this is our first time to hug people, really, that aren't each other, you know. So it's been quite emotional being in Romania. Also, my Russians, because of the lockdown, you know, they're the centre of my life, and I haven't seen them for 2 years. You know, a year and a half. You know, when I last saw them was just before the lockdown started. Well, it was a very, very special moment for me. I was quite, you know, tearful about it. But it was much more than about the show. It was about being with the Russians, about being with people. It was the affirmation of theatre. And I had to do a lot of teaching on Zoom. So last night, some of the students that I'm going to work with came, and it was so wonderful to actually see them, you know, incarnated in front of me. And, you know, Zoom is not good. It's not a substitute for the real thing. And live stream theatre, we do live stream our work, but it's not really a substitute for the living experience of being in the theatre. And I was just so incredibly happy. And also I felt that the audience was really happy to be there as well, that you think I won't take this for granted anymore. I met Silvio again. It was fantastic. I haven't seen him for ages. It must be nearly 20 years. I was planning a show at the Bulandra in the 80s because I go back to Romania for a long, long time. You know, in Ceausescu days, I remember coming here. And I remember the Securitate. I mean, I remember all of those times. And we got very close friends here. And then Jon was going to have us doing something. Karamitru was going to, whom I miss very much, and I haven't seen Jon for ages. But I was very fond of him too. Anyway, he left, and Sylvia took over, and we were planning a big production that never happened for various reasons. But and then we saw each other over the years. Yes, it was really wonderful to be present with his humanity, because that's what's wonderful. You know, you feel you're with an actual mensch, as the Russians say, человек. You know, you're with a real human being, and that's wonderful. Well, it was strange, but we learnt quite a lot, Nick and I, because we were alone, and we became like Mr. and Mrs. Smith in the Bald Prima Donna by UNESCO. We were very polite. We made 3 meals. We got on very well. There were telltale signs of depression, like I couldn't read a book. You know, and then maddeningly, people get very superior and they say, oh, you must use this time to read. You must use this time to read all the big classics. You must, should, you know, this sort of. I couldn't do anything. I foolishly said I have loads of books I'd love to read. I just go into a fog. So we just watch more television, and watching it. And of course, it's all not often, you know, sometimes it's great and you get lost in it, but not often. Most of the time, Nick and I are talking about the acting that we're seeing in the television. So that was one of the things that we did. The first summer in London was beautiful weather, and we sat out, and that was amazing. I discovered how little money we need to live, because we had very little money coming in, but it was quite, because we weren't going out buying cups of coffee. You know, it's sort of like when I'm in Sibiu, you know, you're just vaguely in a sort of vague consuming mode. And if you switch that off and you're making your own coffee and making your own breakfast and making your own lunch and making your own dinner, you don't need that. I was amazed how frugally we could live. That was good. But I think, you know, we were very normal, we were very stable, but I now look back and I think we were a bit mad as well, because we need to have the unpredictable world in our lives, that we actually need that in ourselves to make us whole. And I feel so much better now to have been here for 48 hours. It's been stressful, and I've got the show on, I've reconnected with the Russians, and there was lots of crying and drinking and all of that. But I feel much more normal now. Yeah. And I think when I was being stable and behaving like a kind of bourgeois couple cooking meals, there is something a bit mad about that, actually. But I'm glad I did it. I've never had that experience before. I've never lived like that. I did it once with students, and I loved it. And I find it very ambivalent. And at the end, the audience isn't reassured. You know, if you look at the writing I don't like on television is quite, you know, the story's delivered, it's very fast, and, you know, this line delivers a laugh, this line delivers a tear, this is what the character is, this guy we like, this woman we support, we think this man did the murder, but actually it's too obvious, it has to be someone else. So the problem is that millions of people are going to have to agree. So what do we lose by that, by this new efficient machinery of writing? And we lose all ambivalence, and we lose all ambiguity. That means we lose life, basically. We get a simulacrum of life. Life's not about that. Life's about you saying to me, why? And me saying, I don't know. Maybe I'd like to know. I'd like to struggle to know. I'm not happy that I don't know. And the play at the end of it leaves us with feeling uncomfortable because we don't know, and we realize we don't know. And then we can feel aggrieved, you know, with the artists, like with the parents, and saying, you know, but you didn't tell me what to think, but you didn't give me a satisfying conclusion. And I think if it makes you feel more comfortable, It's probably not art. If it makes you feel good to be alive, it's probably art. But if it explains everything to you, I don't think that's art. I'm a director. It's not my job to tell the truth. It's my job to look life in the eye as horizontally as possible. It's my job to try very hard not to lie. I must try very hard not to lie. I'll end up lying, but I must forgive myself and try better tomorrow. Before the pandemic, more people would say, yes, it's live theatre is very important, we must come together, we must be together, yes, we must be together. And you've put into words something that you haven't experienced or felt, so you have no authority, do you know? And it's not like verbally, in terms of logos, in terms of intellectual ideas, it's not like I've learnt something new, a new information, but I've experienced things. And now I know in my blood and in my nerves that to be isolated is a terrible thing. Love, I think, is about attention, and that love without attention is always toxic. So if somebody loves you but can't pay attention to you, you're in trouble, you know. So people justify what they do in terms of their feelings for you, but actually it's the attention. And if you pay attention to things, you tend to start to love them, you know. When you pay attention to things, you tend to open your heart. The danger is like Juliet, in Romeo and Juliet, you fall in love with your idea of love, and we don't really know who each other is. You can't pay proper attention to the other person. I sort of think in a life that even a strong love between two people, I think it's like a stool that you see with two legs. I think it needs a third leg. You look at something. So when Nick and I sit in a restaurant, we know each other we've met next year 50 years ago, you know. So when we sit at a table, we tend to sit at corners or side by side so we can talk about the other people in the restaurant. You know, we don't want to, so it's like a triangular thing. Like me and Nick will do the play together, so it's us, but we're talking about the play. And we have lots of collaborators, the actors, so, you know, it's a triangular thing. You notice that, parents bring up children, they give everything to the children, and then sometimes when the children leave home, the parents have a funny moment, because the third thing was bringing so much stability. There was something, can I tell you a story? It's probably, I was listening to the radio the other day, and there was a phenomenon discovered that old people who are living alone in London were falling very ill, and then they would get taken into hospital, and they'd be examined and put to bed that night, and the next morning they would be better. But they wouldn't have given any medicine to them. They would have had no treatment. They were just better the next day. And they did massive research. And they discovered that it was the touch and the care and the attention of the doctors and nurses that healed them. It was just by being with other people that healed them. But my story's not about that. My story's about the fact that I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And then I thought, and then I got very depressed a few hours later, and I thought, but I knew this once. My parents who were Irish farmers, they knew that. Their grandparents knew that. Their great-grandparents knew that if you take an old person and lock them away from everyone, they're going to fall sick. Every idiot I'm descended from knew that. So how does that get taken out of my mind so that I listen to it and I think, that's amazing. It's the fact that I found it interesting is really depressing. What was actually interesting was how you forget things. And I think that's one of the things that really worries me today, that we get more efficiencies and we forget that for every efficiency we lose something. And we don't want to see what we've lost. And the people who are selling you the new efficiency don't want you to see what you've lost. But probably the thing that you've lost is something connected with mystery, ambivalence, ambiguity. It's probably something that can't be put into words. And we're moving more and more towards a culture in which if you can't put it into words, it doesn't exist, which is a blasphemy. You know, you can't put the relationship of the mother and the baby into words, although people try. But I think that human beings aren't born without needs. I think we're born and we have a need to be together, and we don't even need to know why. And it's pointless working out why we need to be. I mean, that's why is so often such a stupid question. You know, it's how we are, and if we don't do that, we can fall ill. And sometimes people can say, actually, I don't need to be with people. But it's, I think it's a basic, I think we're, in a way, I think we have a kind of original sin of loneliness. And it's like something we have to get over. So we're actually made go out and see other people and make things happen between us. I think it's, so yeah, and I think it's, we fall ill, many people will fall ill when they can't do that. The imagination doesn't have to be trained. We just have to pay attention to things. And when we get depressed, we hibernate, and we don't pay attention to things anymore. And so only attention will improve attention, you know. So that's all. But if you try to improve attention, you will pervert it. If I try to be attentive, I'm going to be really attentive today. Good morning. I'm really here, and I'm really being attentive to the camera. Yes, I'm being so attentive. I will corrupt it, I will pervert it, and it will become concentration. And concentration is a commoditized version of attention. And that's how, you know, teachers torture their students by telling them to concentrate.